The fortress had survived hours of punishment, but Marcus knew the moment the shadow fell across the command chamber that their luck was ending. Through the viewport, the enemy flagship descended. It was vast, larger than any battleship he had, faced in human wars. Its hull resembled a floating fortress of jagged obsidian, bristling with energy cannons and colossal spear-like protrusions that glowed with molten red. Entire destroyers escorted it like carrion birds around a predator. Compared to this Leviathan, the earlier waves had been nothing more than an opening act. Sarathin's jaw tightened. Her golden eyes flickered with the weight of memory. That ship carries the executioner caste. They are the hand that erases bloodlines. Marcus stared at the monster filling the sky. Looks like they brought their hammer. The fortress responded with fury. Cannons roared, drones swarmed, and the moon itself trembled under the strain. Beams of golden fire lanced out, slamming into the flagship's shields, but the Karzul vessel barely flinched. It turned its colossal guns downward, unleashing a torrent of plasma so powerful that the fortress shields screamed in protest. Panels cracked, arcs of energy exploded across the chamber, and half the displays went dark. Marcus steadied himself. On the console, mind racing. This was no ordinary fight. They could outgun smaller vessels, outmaneuver raiding craft, but against something of this scale, they needed more than cannons. They needed a miracle. Sarathin's voice was grim. The fortress carries one last weapon. My ancestors forged it for wars they hoped never to fight. A star lance, the supernova cannon. Marcus frowned. Supernova? She pointed to the core below the chamber. It draws energy from the heart of the moon, enough power to unmake fleets, enough to obliterate even that. She nodded toward the flagship, now blotting out the stars. A surge of hope flickered in Marcus's chest, only to die when Sarathin's expression hardened. But the core was never finished. It requires a living focus, a will strong enough to survive the ignition. Without one, the energy collapses. The weapon destroys itself instead of its target. Marcus understood instantly. A living battery. She nodded once, reluctantly. A sacrifice. The air in the chamber grew heavier, the reality of her words settling between them like a blade. Marcus's eyes fell to the tactical readouts. Drones were being shredded. Shields were dropping below 30%. The flagship's next volley would punch through. If that happened, the fortress, Sarathin, and any chance of survival would vanish. He clenched his fists. He had come here, ready to die, hadn't he? Alone, bitter, broken. But now, there was something worth protecting. He turned to her. Show me how to get into the core. Her eyes widened, anger sparking. No. You are not Vylori. The core was meant for my kind. Marcus managed a wry grin. Your kind built it. My kind has a talent for doing the impossible, and I've got nothing left to lose. Sarathin's hand shot out, gripping his arm with surprising gentleness despite the claws. Your people still need you. Humanity needs men who can fight like you. He shook his head. Humanity will be fine. They've got millions of soldiers, but you're the last of your empire. You deserve the chance to carry it forward. Me? He coughed, crimson staining his lips. I was already finished when I came here. This just makes my death count for something. Her expression cracked. For the first time, Marcus saw not the warrior princess, but the woman carrying a burden far too heavy alone. You would burn yourself away. For me? She whispered. Not just for you, Marcus said, voice rough but steady. For the chance that your people aren't gone forever. For the chance that someone keeps fighting. The fortress shook violently, a blast tearing through the outer defenses. Time was running out. Marcus stepped toward the core chamber, its walls alive with arcs of white fire. He could feel the heat even from the threshold, like standing at the edge of a star. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, But his resolve never wavered. Sarathin called after him, desperation in her voice. "Marcus!" He looked back, and for the first time in decades he smiled. Not the bitter smirk of a broken soldier, but the steady grin of a man who had found purpose again. "Fire the weapon when I'm inside. Don't hesitate." Her hand pressed against the console, trembling. She wanted to argue, to forbid it, but she saw in his eyes that the choice was already made. Marcus stepped into the core. The chamber wrapped around him, tendrils of energy latching onto his body. Light poured into his veins, his every nerve set ablaze. Agony unlike anything he'd known ripped through him, but he refused to scream. He had lived his whole life through war. He could endure death. The displays around Sarathin lit up. Power surged beyond their limits. The star lance awakened, its barrel extending from the fortress toward the heavens, glowing like a newborn sun. Marcus's voice echoed through the systems, resonant, calm, unbroken. From deep within the moon, ancient mechanisms stirred, channeling Marcus Hale's very essence into energy. The core flared like a miniature sun, its brilliance spilling through the cracks of the stone. Power surged outward, focusing into a single colossal barrel that extended toward the heavens. The Karzul flagship loomed above, casting its monstrous shadow across the battlefield. Its weapons glowed, preparing to unleash the final barrage that would annihilate everything below. But before it could strike, the fortress fired. A beam of pure light erupted from the moon, so blinding that the void itself seemed to recoil. It tore upward, a spear of raw creation and destruction, slamming into the flagship with the force of a newborn star. The Karzul vessel convulsed. Its shields shattered like glass, its armored plating peeled away in molten chunks. The beam bored straight through its heart, ripping along its spine until the entire ship split apart. For one glorious moment, it illuminated the gas giant, painting the darkness with fire. Then came the chain reaction. The flagship's core detonated, igniting its escorts. Ship after ship was caught in the inferno, their hulls cracking open as explosions rippled outward. The once mighty fleet dissolved into a storm of debris and flame, scattering like ashes across the void. Inside the command chamber, Sarathin shielded her eyes from the brilliance. Even her people's technology had never produced such terrible beauty. When the light finally faded, silence fell. The Karzul were gone. The war had ended in a single breath, but the victory tasted bitter. Sarathin turned toward the core chamber. Its light still pulsed, though now with a softer glow. Marcus lay suspended within, body limp, veins lit like molten rivers. His chest rose shallowly, each breath a battle against the fire consuming him. She ran to the chamber's edge, pressing her hands against the barrier. "Marcus, stay with me!" His eyes flickered open, faint but steady. The smile on his lips was weak, yet it carried the weight of peace. "Looks like it worked." "You're burning away," she whispered, voice trembling despite her warrior's pride. "The core is devouring you." He coughed, a sound laced with pain, but still managed to chuckle. "I came here to die, remember? Guess the universe had other plans for how." Her throat tightened. She had watched empires collapse, comrades fall, but this was different. This human, broken and weary, had chosen her cause over his own survival. In him, she saw the strength her people had forgotten, the fire that could not be extinguished. Tears, rare and alien, welled in her golden eyes. "You should have lived." Marcus's voice was fading, but his words carried clarity. "For the first time, I did." His body shuddered, then stilled. But the fortress did not fall quiet. Instead, his presence lingered. The consoles flickered, the walls vibrated, and his voice echoed, not from his lips, but from the systems themselves. Keep fighting, Sarathan. Keep living. Humanity stands with you. Her breath caught. He was gone, yet not. The core had bound, his essence weaving his will into the very heart of the fortress. He had become its guardian spirit, a flame eternal. Sarathan placed her palm against the console, her tears falling onto the ancient glyphs. "You gave me back my future," she whispered, "and I swear I will not waste it." Outside, the ruins of the Karzul fleet drifted silently, their once feared armada reduced to wreckage. The moon's surface glowed faintly where the star-lance had carved through the void. Across the galaxy, sensors would record the cataclysm, whispers would spread, and a legend would be born. Not of the Vailori's lost empire, not of the Karzul's defeat, but of a single human soldier who had turned an ancient fortress into a beacon of hope. Sarathan straightened, her blade still at her side, her gaze hardening with purpose. She was no longer the hunted heir of a dying race. She was the heir of a future rebuilt. And by her side, even in death, stood a human who had shown her the meaning of sacrifice. The fortress hummed softly, its systems alive with Marcus's lingering will. His voice echoed one final time, steady and unyielding. "This isn't the end. It's the beginning." Sarathan closed her eyes, drawing strength from those words. The galaxy would remember this place, this moment, and the soldier who had chosen to burn so others could shine. The broken veteran had found his final battlefield, and in doing so, he had become immortal. Captain Marcus Hale had not come to this forgotten moon to live. He had come to vanish. For decades, he had fought in the Orion Wars, serving on the front lines where human fleets clashed with alien armadas. He had survived battles others hadn't, seen comrades burned alive inside their cockpits, watched civilians drown in oceans of fire when cities fell from orbit. His name had been written into military records, celebrated in propaganda, etched into medals he never wore. To the galaxy, he was a hero. To himself, he was a hollow shell staggering toward the end. The war had taken everything: his health, his family, his faith in peace. His body was failing, lungs eaten away by alien toxins, bones scarred from radiation burns. Each breath came with pain, each step a reminder of what he had lost. Marcus wanted no grand farewell, no funeral pyres. Across the stars, he wanted silence. That silence lay here, on the edge of charted space, where few ships ever traveled. A moon circling a gas giant long abandoned, its surface scarred with deep craters and broken ridges. Locals called it a grave world, haunted by the ruins of a species that had vanished millennia ago. To Marcus, it was perfect. The structure he found was buried into the cliffs, half swallowed by stone and dust. From orbit, it looked like nothing more than jagged rock, but his old instincts told him it had once been alive with purpose. Wide entry tunnels gaped open like the mouth of some ancient beast. The doors were long since rusted away, and the corridors inside echoed with emptiness. When Marcus stepped inside, cane in hand, the air tasted thin and metallic, as though the place had not breathed in centuries. His boots stirred dust that had settled generations before. Alien markings ran along the walls, etched in patterns he couldn't read. The ceilings arched high, ribbed with unfamiliar supports as though the builders had been taller than humans. He wandered deeper, coughing, each rasp of his lungs loud in the silence. There was no sound but the shuffle of his feet and the faint clink of gear against his belt. He found chambers filled with shattered consoles, strange tables, and skeletal remains of machines whose purposes were lost to time. And he smiled, a tired, bitter curve of his lips. This was where he would rest, forgotten by everyone. Another, ruin among ruins. In the command chamber, half buried under rubble, he discovered a dormant power core. It pulsed faintly, as if the fortress still dreamed. With effort, he dragged cables back into place, pried open control panels, and pressed a hand against the activation plate. For a moment, nothing. Then the base stirred. A low hum rolled through. The floor like distant thunder. Lights flared along the walls, symbols glowing with alien fire. Consoles came alive, screens flickering with unknown codes. The chamber lit up in a storm of colors that painted his scarred face in blue and gold. Marcus sank into a chair, heart pounding. He had meant only to wake it enough to keep the air circulating, enough to last his final days. But something deeper had responded, something he did not understand. The fortress was alive again. He sat there, coughing blood into his sleeve, watching the alien systems awaken one by one. Part of him thought he should shut it all down before anyone noticed the spark of activity in this grave world, but another part of him, the soldier that never truly died, couldn't help but feel a flicker of anticipation. That flicker became fire when alarms lit up across the console. The scanners had detected movement. Marcus pushed himself up, limping toward the viewport. The stars shifted as shadows cut across them. A ship had entered orbit. Sleek, silver. Its hull shimmered like liquid metal, its engines whispering with strange energy. This was not human technology. It was not a scavenger ship. It was not a trader or explorer. It moved with intent, precision, ownership. The sky above cracked open with its arrival. The alien vessel descended toward the moon, engines thrumming, like a heartbeat across the barren cliffs. The fortress answered, systems pulsing brighter as though recognizing its master. Marcus's stomach turned cold. He had been wrong. This was no abandoned ruin. The ship that descended from the sky looked like no vessel Marcus Hale had ever seen. Its hull glistened like liquid steel, shifting faintly as though it were alive. Veins of golden light ran across its surface, pulsing with each beat of its engines. It made no sound until it landed, and even then, the ground shuddered as if the moon itself acknowledged its master's return. Marcus stood in the entry hall of the fortress, leaning heavily, on his cane, watching through a cracked viewport as the ship settled onto the cliffs outside. He had fought against dozens of alien races in his lifetime, but this technology was different. Sleek, yet ancient. Regal, yet deadly. Whoever had built this, they had not been scavengers or nomads. They had been rulers. A ramp extended, releasing. A shaft of light into the dark, and then the figure appeared. Tall, imposing, armored in segmented plates that shimmered like obsidian edged with fire. She moved with the grace of a warrior who carried centuries in her bloodline. Her eyes glowing, like molten gold, locked immediately on the fortress, on him. Marcus felt his throat tighten. This was no random traveler. This was the rightful heir. She strode inside without hesitation, as though she had walked these halls 1,000 times before. The fortress seemed to recognize her presence. The walls brightened, runes flared to life, and doors opened at her. Approach. She was not a trespasser. She belonged here. When she reached him, her voice was low and commanding, carrying the weight of authority. Human. Why do you desecrate the sanctum of my ancestors? Marcus coughed, his lungs burning, and straightened as much as he could. Didn't know it was yours. Thought it was abandoned. His tone was dry, weary. I was just looking for somewhere to end things quietly. The alien narrowed her eyes, studying him. You come to die in the heart of Valori blood. Foolish. Or fate. He raised a brow. Valori? She stepped closer, her towering form casting a shadow over him. "I am Sarathin, last heir of the Valori Empire. This fortress is mine, as is every star my people once ruled." Her voice softened, but the steel beneath it never faltered. "You stand on sacred ground, human." Marcus almost laughed. His voice cracked as he replied, "Sacred or not, it's the only ground left that doesn't care who I was." But Sarathin wasn't listening to his bitterness. Her head tilted slightly, her gaze snapping upward as if sensing something beyond sight. The fortress itself seemed to respond, consoles flickering with warning signals. Symbols scrolled rapidly across the displays, accompanied by an urgent hum that rattled the chamber. Sarathin's expression darkened. "They found me," Marcus's instinct screamed. "Who?" "The Karzul," she said, spitting the name like poison. "Hunters, executioners. They've pursued me across systems. They will not stop until my bloodline is erased." "E!" gripped the edge of a console, his soldier's reflexes overriding his broken body for a moment. "And if they find me here?" Her gaze met his, sharp and certain. "Then humanity dies beside me." The words hung heavy in the air. Marcus had wanted solitude, had come here to embrace oblivion, but the universe was not offering him peace. It was offering him a fight. Outside, the first shadows fell across the sky. Dark ships emerged from warp, angular and menacing, their hulls bristling with weapons. One became 2, then 10, then hundreds, spreading like a plague across orbit. The Karzul fleet had arrived. Marcus clenched his fists, the fire in his chest igniting despite his weakness. He had thought his days of battle were over. He had thought he was finished. But seeing that armada descend, hearing the fortress groan as enemy scanners locked on, something deep inside him awoke. He turned to Sarathin. "Then we don't wait for them." Her golden eyes narrowed. "What do you suggest, human?" He managed a grim smile, the kind only war veterans wear. "We fight." For the first time, Sarathin's composure cracked. Surprise flickered across her face, not at his words, but at the conviction behind them. Humans were short-lived, fragile compared to her kind, yet here was one standing broken and scarred, still ready to face annihilation. The fortress shuddered again as the first plasma barrages began to streak across the void, lighting the moon's surface with fire. Sarathin straightened, her voice resonant with resolve. "Very well. If you choose to stand beside me, then we make this fortress a weapon." And with that, the heir of a fallen empire and the soldier, who had come here to die, stood side by side, preparing to face a storm that could erase them both. The storm came fast. The Karzul fleet did not hesitate once they dropped into orbit. They moved like predators that had cornered prey, tight formations, weapons primed, their blackened hulls covered in hooked armor that gleamed red under, the glow of the gas giant. Every ship broadcast a single message across the void: extermination. Inside the fortress, Marcus Hale felt his instincts take control. He had been a soldier too long not to recognize a siege when he saw one. The difference was this fortress was alien, its systems unfamiliar, its weapons sleeping for centuries. Yet even as he studied the consoles filled with shifting glyphs, the patterns made sense. Numbers, arcs, trajectories. War was universal. Sarathin placed her clawed hand on the central core, her voice resonating in a tongue older than humanity itself. The entire moon rumbled as the fortress awakened in full. Huge slabs of rock slid aside, revealing long-buried cannons that clawed toward the sky. Energy fields crackled as dome-like shields enveloped the installation. Hidden doors split. Open along the cliffs and clouds of ancient drones rose into the thin atmosphere. They were sharp insect-like machines, wings humming, each carrying weapons that pulsed with alien light. Though centuries had passed, the Valori craftsmanship endured. Marcus couldn't help but grin. That's more like it. The first Karzul, volleys screamed down. Plasma lances streaked across the void, slamming into the fortress shields. The impact shook the walls, sparks rained from the ceiling, and the air itself quivered with force. But the shields held. For now. Direct their fire away from the weak points, Marcus barked, scanning the tactical displays. Rotate the defensive grid, keep them guessing. Sarathan arched a brow at his tone, but obeyed. Together they guided the fortress like captains of an ancient beast. The cannons roared to life, spitting golden energy into the black. Explosions flared in the distance as enemy ships were torn apart, shattered into debris that lit up the night sky. But the Karzul were relentless. Their formation shifted, weaving patterns Marcus had seen before on human battlefronts. They pressed harder, layering fire in waves designed to wear down the shields. Dozens of drones were torn apart, their fragments raining like meteors across the moon's surface. Too many, Marcus muttered, his jaw tight. His hands moved across alien consoles with the confidence of a commander who had led fleets before. Shift power to the heavy batteries. Don't waste time on the small ones. Take out their carriers. Sarathan's golden eyes flared as she realized what he was doing. You think like a warlord. More like a man who's had enough practice, Marcus said grimly. A barrage of return fire cut through the void. One of the enemy cruisers blossomed into fire, spinning out of formation. The drones swarmed through the gap, cutting down stragglers before they could regroup. For a heartbeat, victory seemed possible. Then the second wave arrived. More ships warped in, sleek destroyers bristling with claws of molten metal, their hulls marked with the jagged runes of conquest. They unleashed a storm of firepower that hammered the shields. Warning sirens screamed through the fortress as the barrier flickered. Stone cracked, ceilings split, and rubble crashed down around them. Sarathan steadied herself, her blade flashing out to cut through falling debris before it could crush Marcus. Her voice carried no fear, only rage. They will not take this place. Not while I draw breath. Marcus wiped blood from his mouth, forcing his battered body to keep moving. Then we make them pay for every step they take. The fortress guns thundered again, drones darting like hornets through the enemies. Swarms. Explosions dotted the stars, but the Karzul pressed on, driven by a hatred so old it felt carved into their bones. Marcus could feel the rhythm of battle returning to him. He gave orders, shifted strategies, anticipated enemy maneuvers before they even began. It was as though time itself had rewound, and he was once more at Titan Gate, leading humans against impossible odds. Only now his ally was an alien princess bound by the same desperation. But even with every advantage wrung from the fortress, Marcus knew the truth. They weren't winning, they were delaying. The Karzul had numbers beyond counting, ships beyond measure. The enemy was bleeding, yes, but so was the fortress. Every barrage weakened the shields, every explosion drained their resources. The base trembled violently, alarms shrieking as another line of fire tore across the defenses. Marcus grabbed the edge of a console, his eyes blazing. He had come here to die, but he hadn't expected to feel alive again. And yet, standing shoulder to shoulder with Sarathan, facing down annihilation, he found purpose burning in his chest. The fortress shook as something new tore through its defenses. Not bombardment this time. Impact. Marcus felt it before he saw it. A grinding tremor that rattled the command chamber, followed by the shriek of tearing metal deep within the corridors. The Karzul had changed tactics. Instead of burning the fortress from orbit, they were drilling into it. Boarding pods, massive cylinders tipped with fusion cutters, had slammed into the walls and bored straight through. Breach detected, Sarathan snapped, scanning the glowing glyphs. Her eyes narrowed. They're inside, Marcus grabbed, his rifle without hesitation. His body screamed in protest, but his mind was already locked in. He had seen this before. Once the enemy got boots inside, it became a slaughterhouse. "Then we meet them the old-fashioned way," he growled. They left the command chamber and sprinted into the fortress halls. Sirens howled, lights flickered, and dust rained from the ceiling as the walls reverberated with combat. The air stank of scorched metal and alien chemicals. The first wave came crashing through, a horde of towering Karzul warriors. They were monstrous, clad in spiked armor that seemed fused to their bodies. Their weapons glowed with molten edges, axes, and blades built not only to kill but to terrify. Marcus opened fire the instant they appeared. His pulse rifle spat streaks of burning plasma, cutting down the lead brute. He shifted targets instantly, dropping another, then another, the rhythm of battle flowing through him like second nature. Beside him, Sarathin was a storm. Her blade crackled with golden energy, each swing cleaving through armor as though it were cloth. She moved with the fury of a predator defending her lair, her strikes precise yet feral. The hallway became chaos. Plasma bursts seared into enemy ranks. Alien blades screeched against metal walls. Bodies hit the floor smoking. Marcus reloaded, coughed blood, and kept firing. He wasn't fast like Sarathin, but every shot he placed was lethal. More pods tore into the structure. The Karzul poured in like a tide, their roars echoing through the corridors. The fortress became a maze of firefights. Explosions lit the halls, screams mingled with thunder, and the air filled with smoke thick enough to choke. Marcus and Sarathin fought back to back, pinned in a narrow junction where multiple corridors met. The enemy surged from both sides, blades flashing. Marcus ducked a swing, jammed his rifle under a brute's chin, and fired point blank. Sarathin spun, carving a sweeping arc that bisected two more. Sparks and blood sprayed across the walls. Her voice rose above the din. "Why, human, you said you came here to die, yet you fight like one who clings to life." Marcus snarled, blasting another warrior through the chest. "Because dying is easy. Fighting means something. If I stop now, then I might as well never have lived." Her golden eyes flicked toward him, fierce with something beyond battle. Recognition. For a moment, their movements aligned perfectly, her blade cutting down what his bullets missed, his gunfire clearing the path for her strikes. Still, the enemy pressed harder. For every one they felled, more swarmed in. Marcus's shoulders ached, his lungs burned with each breath. His rifle overheated, and he was forced to swing it like a club before drawing his sidearm. "Fall back!" Marcus barked, scanning the collapsing defense. "We can't hold this corridor, too many of them!" Sarathin slashed down another brute, then gave a sharp nod. Together, they retreated, step by step, fighting through the winding halls. They sealed bulkheads behind them, forcing the Karzul to cut through, buying precious seconds at a time. By the time they stumbled into the inner chamber, Marcus's armor was scorched, his arm bleeding from a jagged wound. Sarathin's armor plates were dented and scorched, though her movements remained unyielding. The command core pulsed around them, ancient energy flowing like veins of light through the walls. Here, at least, they had a chance to hold. The fortress itself groaned as orbital bombardment resumed outside, shaking the structure as though the entire moon might split apart. Marcus leaned against the console, blood dripping from his chin, and forced himself upright again. "This is where it gets worse," he muttered. Sarathin stood beside him, her blade sparking as it recharged. "Then let them come. We are not prey." Marcus looked at her, scarred human eyes meeting golden alien fire. Despite the roar of battle outside, despite the weight of death pressing in on all sides, he felt something stir in his chest, something he thought had died long ago. Not fear, not despair,